evening, and good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, welcome. So welcome to this week's IFA Global Café. My name is Roxana, and I'm so excited to be moderating today's just incredible discussion. This week, I have the true honor and really pleasure of introducing Dr. Nancy Swanger for the topic of leadership in transforming the way we provide long-term care. So as background for everyone, Nancy is the founding director of the Granger Cobb Institute for Senior Living, which is housed in the School of Hospitality, Business Management. She's also the Associate Dean for Inter-College Partnerships at Washington State University, and in addition to her administrative duties, she teaches various courses in the curriculum, including seniors living operations, professional development, and special topics focusing on current trends or industry issues. As part of the UN Decade of Healthy Aging, Nancy was also named to the Healthy Aging 50, one of 4 from the United States. Prior to coming to Washington State University, Nancy also taught at the University of Idaho and Lewis Clark State College. So it really goes without saying that Nancy's experiences, her achievements, and her background positions her as such a great and ideal expert for this week's very important topic of leadership and transforming the way we provide long-term care. And we're very excited to have you with us today, Nancy. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here this morning.
Before getting into some questions for you, Nancy, I just want to remind and encourage folks and everyone on this call to please type questions or comments in the chat as they emerge for our key expert today. But to start things off, Nancy, you have a very interesting and unique background, not only in older adult living sphere, but also in the hospitality industry. So with career choices often being based and impacted on life experiences, what really prompted you to go into the field of older adult living spaces?
Well, honestly, it was never my idea. If I want to be brutally honest this morning, at the time I was the director of the hospitality school at Washington State University, and I was approached on 2 different occasions, but almost in parallel, by 2 very successful senior living operators in the Seattle area. Jerry Meyer, who at the time was the COO and president of Aegis Living, reached out to me and said, you know, you've got this wonderful hospitality program. Our hospitality program actually is the 3rd oldest in the United States. It's been around since 1932. And we've been up and running for quite some time. And he said, you've got this great hospitality program. We have these senior living communities, and I think we need to be partnering. And I didn't even know what he was talking about. My parents were in their 80s. They were still living in their own home. I had no knowledge of seniors housing, even as a thing, really. And in my mind, all I thought about was nursing homes and 24/7 skilled nursing care. And I did not see at that point the connection between what Jerry was trying to tell me about seniors housing and our hospitality program. And then just shortly, or again, almost in parallel, Bill Pettit, who was a co-founder and president of Merrill Gardens, also reached out independently and said almost nearly the same thing. And before I knew it, we brought several people to the table to start talking about this possibility for collaboration. And that's how it all got started. My degrees are actually all in education. My experience is all in restaurant operations, and here I am, you know, heading up a senior living program. So I run the gamut on how this has all come to be. But I'll tell you, through all of it, there is this link about hospitality and others directedness.
Thank you very much. And actually just picking up on that point and the link, can you speak a little to us about this link, this connection, and the relationship essentially between the long-term care and the hospitality sector and the associations with service delivery outcomes in these settings for older adults?
Sure. You know, as I started to study the industry and people educated me on it, what I learned was very quickly, quite frankly, in our hospitality school, or through, the connection with the hospitality school, when you look at the seniors housing model that we were studying, and keep in mind, we are focusing in our program on age-restricted communities, active living, assisted living, independent living, memory care. And when you look at that model of seniors housing, it absolutely is almost identical to the operations of those communities are almost identical to the operations in a hotel. They both have food and beverage, and they both have housekeeping, and they both have maintenance, and they both have transportation and a concierge and some kind of activities and a variety of things. The only difference in reality is that in seniors housing, the people move in and stay there. That's their home. They live there longer. They're older upon arrival, but they're not there for 2.3 days. They might be there for 2.3 years plus. And so, but in terms of the operations of those two business sectors, they run nearly the same in many ways. And so we thought, for us with our hospitality program, that senior living would be a real natural extension of that model. In our hospitality school, which is housed in the Carson College of Business, there are three options for majors, and one is the traditional generalist hospitality major. Then one is in wine and beverage business management, because we are in the state of Washington, which is the second largest wine producing country or state in the United States outside of California. And so and then we've added this third major in senior living. And so all of those things, blend together very nicely, but fit under that hospitality umbrella.
No, thank you very much for highlighting that and making the connection. I guess also understanding your diverse and to an extent indirect path within the older adult and long-term care living spaces. Were there any misconceptions or stigmas perhaps related to long-term care and assisted living spaces that you first had before going into the field yourself?
Absolutely. And I probably need to confess that sin that I prejudged, not knowing, out of sheer ignorance. And again, as I mentioned early on, I had no experience with the industry, because my parents were still living in their own home, and my only experience would have been sort of the nursing home, skilled nursing model, that is very much needed, but very much different than where we've chosen to focus our program. Now, I will say, over time, not only just through my own journey in education and these amazing senior living operators helping me get there. And I should mention, before I go too far, there are two other key people in this. I call them the Fab Four. I've already mentioned Jerry Meyer from Aegis Living and Bill Pettit from Merrill Gardens, but there were two others. Tana Gall, who at the time was the president of Leisure Care, now with Merrill Gardens, and then our namesake Granger Cobb, who was the CEO of Emeritus. Those four people came to a conference table and helped me craft a course, a senior living, and it was at the time an elective course in senior living, to get this whole thing started. So I don't want to be remiss in mentioning that there really were four sort of founding folks who were involved in this whole project. But as I went through my own journey, and they taught me, and I learned, and I discovered, and I visited, and all of those things, it became very clear to me that I was misinformed. I truly was misinformed. And excuse me. And then as this has happened, I've actually sort of come full circle, because as it turns out, my dad passed away about 4 years ago, and my mom lived about 3 hours drive away from me. But my mom never learned how to drive, and so living on her own really. Well, first of all, it's not healthy. We know that, but it really wasn't an option either. On the other hand, I'm not retired. And so her being in my home all day long by herself would not have been good either. So I became the adult child consumer of the senior living product. And I moved my mom down into a milestone community called Bishop Place, which was near my home. And so and she did very well there. She lived there almost 2 years. She passed away not quite 2 years ago at 90, almost 92. But so I have learned a lot about the industry once you become sort of the adult child, helping with decisions and visits and all of those kinds of things, especially going through a pandemic. Good Lord. I feel my perceptions of the industry from where I started to where I am now, not even in the same space. I was so misinformed.
Thank you. Thank you for, for going into detail, but also giving me that personal experience aspect, and my condolences as well. For people who don't have similar experiences to an extent, how would you suggest a good way forward of combating some of these misconceptions or stigmas that we have might be? How do you think we can move forward in knowing, yes, there is a problem, there is often stigma, what can we do next?
I think just on a very personal level, I joke, but it's really not funny. If we're breathing, we're aging. The bottom line is no one escapes aging generally, unless it's a very sad thing. Those who don't age, that's really a very sad thing. That means their life has probably been cut short far too early. And so I think one of the things we have to do, and I will tell you, I see it shifting a little bit in this with my students and generationally, because I'm at the tail end of the baby boomers. And so again, my parents and grandparents were people who lived in their own homes right up until the end, or live, family, shared experiences with family if they were able, whatever that might be. However, when I go into class now and I ask the students on the first day, tell me about your experiences with senior living. What do you know, or what don't you know? We sort of start with a baseline. More and more by percentage of each class, students are aware. They either have loved ones who've lived in senior living communities. Perhaps I have several who maybe that was their first job. They worked as in the dining room serving food. So there's a lot more exposure on the younger end, I think, than there used to be. Certainly. And so I think that will help. And I think that will really help sort of shift the paradigm about what this industry is and what it has to offer. On the other hand, if you're sort of one of those people in the middle, or even at my age, I'm not to the point yet that I'm seriously looking at moving away from my own home into seniors housing. But I think all of us would do ourselves a favor if we stopped by a local community and just walked around. I think we need to educate ourselves. I think many people, whether you have children or don't have children, or significant others in your life, aging alone is not the right answer. Isolation is an absolute killer. And so I think we need to be more proactive, just sort of as citizens, determining our own future, and stop into a local community, look around, go online. There are tons of resources and things available now for people to do some of that information searching. Yet maybe we just don't want to, or that's not for me, I'm not there, oh, I'm fine, whatever. I think we have to get out of our own way, and start making those choices, or doing a little bit more exploring on our own, even in our own backyards.
Thank you very much. Picking up on the point of your students, actually. So as an associate professor at the Washington State University for the seniors living management major, I'm curious to know what key lessons you want your students to learn, considering they really are essentially the future generation of policymakers in the long-term care setting.
I think in our case, because we're in higher education, just if you're familiar, the general buckets, I'll call them, of higher education are around education, research, and service. And I think our biggest we have things happening in all of those buckets in various ways, but primarily our goal with our program is to help educate the next generation of leaders in senior housing. And I think a couple of things that we really stress to our students. One is, in terms of a career path, for the next 40 plus years, these young students will be able to sort of write their own ticket, because the demand is huge. The numbers over 65 are only continuing to grow. What do they say? 10,000 every day turn 65. That will continue to grow while demographically the population is getting smaller. In that age group of, say, 40 to 60 that might be a caregiver for an older parent, those numbers are shrinking. So there just simply aren't enough people that could have been eligible caregivers, possibly on one end, to take care of this booming aging population. So I think I really try to stress to these students that if you have an affinity for this population and you want to serve others and you want to grow and develop, this is a career option for you. And the other thing I know about this generation of students, it's not just about the paycheck. Of course, they need to make a certain amount of money and do those sorts of things that contribute to a quality lifestyle. However, it is also very important for this younger generation of students to do work that matters. They want to know that every day they're making a positive difference. It's not just about a paycheck. It's about doing work that matters and is impactful. And what could be more impactful in seniors housing than making the life of a resident better each and every day that you have an encounter. The other thing that I would want, I tell students, because I have a variety of students in my course. It's not just students who have chosen to major or minor in senior living management, because actually those 2 degree options are fairly new for us. Oftentimes it's, why are you in this class? Well, I needed 3 credits and this fit my time block. Those of you who used to, were college students once, that story. We've kind of all been there. And so they sort of fall into the course by accident. However, it doesn't take long for the light to turn on and them to realize, and I really push this, that this isn't an industry that requires a certain major. Certainly there might be components of it. I mean, if you want to be a nurse, then that requires a different degree offering than, say, a business degree. On the other hand, there's a place for everyone, really, in this industry. I had this last semester, I had a young man who was in construction management. Well, you know what? They buy real estate and develop and build communities. I mean, those are all options. There are options for all kinds of people, regardless of the major. So I think those are the 2 things. I think the longevity of the career path and the growth trajectory, and the fact that your major isn't nearly as important as your heart is in this space.
Thank you very much for that. Looking through the chat, I see Mr. Dominic Boyd has a comment. Dominic, may I please ask you to unmute to pose your question?
Thank you very much. Appreciate what you've shared, Nancy, so far. I'm particularly interested in long-term care. My mom lived in a retirement home until she passed away a few years ago, and she really liked it there. It was a for-profit in Halifax. I am interested in how quality of life is promoted in the non-profit versus the for-profit long-term care. Have you been able to discover any differences in how leadership is exerted in those 2 different sort of systems, and how does it impact on the quality of life of the residents?
That's a great question. And we have not specifically done a research project in that area. I will share with what I have observed anecdotally. Like any business out there, and especially, again, we are primarily talking of, the industry partners that we work with are primarily in the for-profit sector. But it's like any industry. There are great operators and there are not so great operators. And I think that works in the for-profit and the not-for-profit space as well. And And so, the great operators in either space are going to make sure that the experience of their residents is as great as it can possibly be every single day. Does it always happen that way? Of course it doesn't. Things happen. On the other hand, the goal, the programming, the hiring of the staff, the leadership, all of those things contribute to that quality of life on both sides, not for profit and for profit. So to me, it really comes down to the operator. How committed are they? How good are they? How do they, what drives them every day? I think that makes a huge difference. But in terms of, specific things different from one to the other, I probably couldn't be the one that would tell you that, because I have no personal research in that space.
Thank you both very much. Mr. David Richardson, you also posed a question in the chat. Can I ask you to please unmute?
Yes, I'm wondering the link between between seniors residences and the hospitality industry is quite an interesting one that you've stressed, and it invites, at least in my mind, the question: how can a better, broader understanding of that link lead to changes in the way seniors residences and long-term care homes and so on are designed and managed?
So that's a great question. And I will tell you how I sort of bridged that gap, because it took me a while when Jerry Meyer first came to talk to me about this collaborative project we needed to work on between seniors housing and hospitality. Again, I admitted I had no clue what that meant. I didn't know. And what I have learned, or what I think I have discovered over time, is when the hospitality piece is added into this, it becomes, for the resident in a community, it becomes much more of an experience. And I'm gonna say this, but it's gonna sound really harsh, but I just want to sort of stress the point. If you are in, say, a traditional more medical model in maybe the 24/7 skilled nursing space, and there's wonderful care provided there. So I'm going to say this, but hoping that you just sort of get the point. It's much more, sometimes it's much more transactional. I need to administer meds to this patient. First of all, just the terminology. There's patients and there's residents. In the medical model, it's more about patients and the process and transactional pieces of delivery of the care, and making sure the physical self is being cared for. I think in the seniors housing space that goes up and sort of stop short a little bit of what we're doing at that 24/7 skilled nursing space, the hospitality piece is much more experiential. Yes, we need to, we also pass meds and have medication management technicians and folks passing medications and doing those things for our residents. But it's not just transactional. It's as the med tech and the resident, I'm having a conversation with you. I know you, Mrs. Smith. I can see you every day and tell if you're declining in any way, if things are starting to shift. There's a relationship there on a different level that may not always be present, say, in a more fully skilled medical model. And so I think that it's not, we try to, one of the things we focus on, I think, in the seniors housing space is it is really about the dignity and quality of life. On the other hand, it's also about allowing people to maintain their independence as long as possible, and have a real purpose. And I think that hospitality piece, while it brings in more of sort of a service orientation and an others directedness, it's still about the relationship and the experience that helps keep people in a different place in terms of quality of life and satisfaction and purpose, as opposed to just a more transactional medical model. So I think we fit in that space very nicely. People who are drawn to the hospitality industry or drawn to hospitality as a major want to be of service of others. And again, in seniors housing, there's a fine line there, because we want to be of service to others and develop that relationship, but we don't want to completely do things for others and make them feel irrelevant.
Why, thank you. Thank you both very much. Nancy, I want to take a moment and really understand your thoughts about digital technology. So digital technology really seems to be essential for the future of assisted living spaces, including long-term care settings, but how can we really leverage innovations and technology to ensure quality care services within these settings?
That is the million-dollar question. And I think if we had the answer to that, we would solve a whole lot of the problems in this space. There is no lack of products and technologies available either for residents, for families, for staff in the seniors housing space. But there are several problems that I hear continually from operators. One is especially things that are related more to the staff side and operationally, that the systems don't talk to each other. So you've got your health record system, and you might have your own internal HR system, and you've got a variety of things and platforms and software that are designed to sort of make your operations better, but none of them talk to each other. And so it's very difficult to really make them functional. And the other, one of the other things that I hear also is quite often is that what happens is sometimes is that there's this great product that comes out that might be available, yet staff resist and don't use it the way it's intended, or maybe it's not their fault. Maybe they're not trained well to use it as it's intended, or maybe we should have got their input first. That happens a lot of times, I think, in companies. Sort of this top-down notion regarding technology is, oh, hey, we've got this latest, greatest thing. And so here we'll make this investment and we'll do it, not really understanding maybe and getting the feedback of the people ahead of time who might be using, because everyone thinks they have a great product, and maybe for certain things they do, but they're not always integrated in a way that makes them super helpful and useful. On the resident side, I think there are technologies and things that are available. In fact, we just had we have a week every year on our campus. We celebrate, we have what's called Hospitality Week, and we bring a variety of people in, and advisory board members and all kinds of things related to our hospitality program. And as part of that, this year, we had a technology panel for senior living. And I had Matt Reiners from Eversound, and I had Kyle Rand from Rendeavor, and Aaron Hayes from Enquire, and Steve Moran from Senior Living Foresight moderated the panel for us. And it was about different things. So one of the products is about, one of the reasons that people as they age go into isolation is when they can't hear. When people have lost their hearing to the point that they can no longer contribute to a conversation or hear, they self-isolate, they withdraw. And Matt's product helps with that, helps keep people engaged. And it's a headset device, and I don't understand the technology, but the residents who use it love it. Kyle's product is virtual reality technology, where they do a variety of programming things, but one of the coolest things they did that he talked a lot about was with dementia residents, and where they have created programs whereby they may use drone footage, a variety of things, to go back to where that resident actually grew up. Maybe it was a family farm, maybe whatever it was. They have pictures and footage and activities and variety of things of that person's home. And then they can even pipe in's not the right word, but they can include audio of children or other residents who can talk through with their loved one and talk about this space, because that oftentimes with dementia, they can remember those things further back. And so they have entire conversations, and it brings them to life. And they've even partnered with various other institutes and put kind of sensors, and they can, as people are involved in this virtual reality, they showed a woman, that was playing with a room full of Labrador puppies. and her reaching for them and trying to pet them and talk about them. And they're monitoring all of her muscle movements. And so, trying to keep them, not only some mental clarity, but physically engaged as well. And then Erin's product was more about back of the house in terms of, okay, so it's more of a sales tool of helping monitor and keep buildings full and reacting to potential residents and helping companies do all of that. So there are lots of technologies, I think, that are out there. It's a matter of really determining what are the right ones for your residents, families, and for your staff that work. And of course, they're all expensive generally. And so what do you afford that you can implement and train to actually be useful? But I think the key to all of that is when you're making some of those decisions is involving the boots on the ground sort of people early on. And that could even be residents. It could even be residents. So, I think there's lots of things. The data piece is huge. We collect enormous amounts of data. And if we can harness that in some, one of our buckets is in the research bucket and kind of that data analytics piece, and trying to harness that data. What kinds of data can we put together to actually make some great decisions, or predictions isn't the right word, but be forward thinking regarding quality of life and person-centered care and a variety of things to actually build out that quality of life resident experience. There's a lot to it, and it takes way smarter people than me to figure that out. But the amount of data is enormous. How do we figure out how to use it for the best, the betterment of our residents and our staff?
No, absolutely. And thank you very much for that very comprehensive answer. I think a lot of people in the chat have even picked at certain points and contributed. And one is actually Ms. Sue Archibald, Dr. Sue Archibald, actually. Sue, would you mind please unmuting and posing your question?
Oh, thank you, Roxana, and thank you, everybody. So yeah, as you can hear, probably I'm here from the UK, so it's great to join you. And Nancy, thanks. I really appreciated your person-centered perspective and so on, particularly as I've said on the chat room. I've been involved in sourcing long-term care as you have, and it brings it very much home to you about yeah, it changes your perspective. But my background is in hearing loss and in the management of hearing loss. And I started with deaf children, but actually increasingly become involved with older people, and about the value and the importance of communication in residential care and residential homes, and how so often hearing loss is ignored because it's not obvious, it's not easily seen. Yet it leads, we have huge evidence about it leading to isolation, mental health problems, the link with cognitive decline. The data, as you know, I'm sure, becomes clearer and clearer. And of course, if it's got a certain face validity about it, hasn't it? That if you can't hear what's going on about you, and so on. So it's great to hear you mention that and how important it is. Can you see ways in which you've seen it well managed in some facilities? Because so often there are so many things to do that people actually forget the importance of managing hearing aids well, of ensuring they're fitting, that they're working, the basic stuff and so on, or the communication tactics that can make life so different for those with hearing loss. And actually, when you've got a hearing loss, it's very difficult to advocate for yourself too. So thanks, Nancy. Just a few comments about how you see that being well managed.
Thank you for your kind words. I have seen a couple of things. First of all, the generation that we have generally living in seniors housing today is about 85 to 80, average age 85, 87-ish. And the difficult thing about hearing also, because I dealt with it with my own mom, it comes on so gradually. You don't, as the outsider, as the child, I'm almost embarrassed to say, I just didn't really realize it was like all of a sudden one day my mom couldn't hear. Well, I'm pretty sure she didn't wake up one day and just couldn't hear. I just didn't notice. And and that is a problem. I mean, again, there's another lesson. In addition to us all on this call being more proactive about touring our senior living communities and finding out what our options are before we need them, maybe we should be having our hearing checked on a regular basis as well. Because by the time I realized my own mom had a problem, her range of hearing was so small. It was either she couldn't hear it or it was a screeching, shrieking sound. Hearing aids wouldn't help. Well, that's sad. That's really sad. And so one of the things I see, or not one of the things, but I see very integrated approaches in the communities that I visit currently. There are several communities have their own sort of TV channel that they have that comes up on the TV screen in the residence rooms whereby announcements or activity, all of those things are shared, but they're shared out loud, but they're also closed caption. There are also, this is also a generation that's used to reading a newspaper. And so they will also print things out. A lot of things in multimedia delivery pieces that allow the residents to stay informed or be informed from that angle. But I'll tell you quite honestly, the difficult part and I don't know that I've yet seen it super well, is going to the dining room. If you go to the dining room and it's funny, residents tend to be a little bit territorial and almost cliquish about where they're going to sit in the same spot with the same people every day, and do they self-select those table partners based on ability to hear? I think they do. I think there's some other things. I think there's common interests. There's a variety of things about that. But I noticed with my own mom, she would have rather sat alone, which is terrible, than sit with a table of people because she couldn't hear well enough to contribute. And so, for example, this Eversound product with the headset, it actually, folks who already have hearing aids, it actually works with them. It's not a replacement, but it's an enhancement to their hearing aid system. But I do think there is a chunk of people, residents currently, that have such severe hearing loss that's sort of beyond help at this point, that it becomes far more challenging to keep them engaged. And so, but really the simple dining experience, that might be the most, that's an important part, the food and the social part of the dining experience every day. And if you can't hear well enough, you're missing a big chunk of that experience. So certainly the multimodal delivery to keep people informed, but I don't think that's enough. But I'm not a speech and hearing specialist, so I'm not sure what all the answers are there.
I think it's building great links with good audiology services who are running person-centered care. Just a couple of things. The acoustics in the dining room are probably lousy as well, and could easily be
some of them, yes.
And I work with people with cochlear implants, which work when hearing aids work no more. And the oldest person who's had a cochlear implant is 100. So
wow.
never give up. And the other thing you said about some of us with the International Federation of Aging and WHO are driving forward globally about adult hearing screening after the age of 50. So it's easy to do. We've got the technology to do that very easily. And that would then pick all of us up, myself included, who are starting to lose their hearing, and address it while it was still easy to do so.
And somewhat fixable. Caught early, it can be helped.
Exactly. And yes, thank you.
Thank you both very much for both the question as well as the answer. Mr. David Richardson, you have a question in the chat regarding the design and use of space, which I think to an extent ties in very nicely to what was just spoken. Do you mind unmuting and posing your question?
Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up from my earlier question. Again, the talk about the link between hospitality industry and seniors residence and long-term care. And I'm interested, in posing a question, I noted that one of the significant differences between a typical hotel and a typical long-term care or seniors residence is the use of space and the decor, and particularly the use of fine art. And I've noticed that more and more health facilities are using fine art. They're contracting to bring quality art into the facility, and there seems to be a growing body of research now on the effect of art in a long-term care setting or a other health setting. As a stimulant for conversation, as a way of making the unfamiliar feel familiar, and so on. And I'm just wondering if you have any comments about that. I'm trying to champion that in my community because we have the opportunity for a new long-term care facility to be built. But I'm just wondering sort of how broadly this could be applied, and what you see as the significance of the use of fine art and the use of creative use of space in these residences.
Well, I applaud you for making moves that direction. I think it's absolutely critical, and I think it's part of going back to this notion of sort of the person-centered, person-centered care. In that, you know, when I think about person-centered care, I think about the care of the entire human. That's emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, all of those things, those elements of wellness that come into play. And my first visit to a community, when I still didn't know what they were, I walked into a beautiful ageist living community in Bellevue, Washington. And it was like walking into the lobby of a fine hotel. And that, you know, the really sort of progressive operators, I think, quality operators have already started to have already or are moving that direction with the ambiance in the environment. People want to move in to some place that's beautiful. You know, when you're moving out of your home, it's still, seniors housing still, like it or not, is a very needs-based business, all of it. You know, it's generally, for most people, not until something happens, a fall, the death of a spouse, whatever it might be, that sort of gets people to move into seniors housing. And in order for those things to be more of a proactive choice, I think those design elements have to come into play. And the other part about that is, initially those design elements that came in that were sort of over the top, that incorporated fine arts and beautiful colors and glorious staircases that many residents would never climb, but were right in the front because they were grand and glorious, because they were selling to the adult children. We had to build a product that, you know, many of the decisions around parents moving into seniors housing fall on the only daughter, the oldest daughter, or a daughter-in-law. Well, that woman typically is a working woman. And to make her feel less guilty about having to move mom or dad or another loved one into a community, it's gotta wow her. And quite honestly, the psychology of some of those furnishings and decor were about the sale of winning over the adult child involved in this equation. Now, I work with some companies. There's a beautiful community in the Seattle area that is a part of the leisure care portfolio called the Murano. And the Murano, oh Lord, I mean, it has original Chihuly glass structures in the middle of its lobby. I mean, unbelievable, over the top, original pieces of art and a variety of things. Now, is it cheap to live there? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's quite pricey, actually. But there is an element of the population who certainly can afford that, and they want that kind of opulence around them. Is that everybody? No, it's certainly not. In fact, one of the growing areas that in at least in the United States is in this area of how do we create the product that serves the middle income market. You know, we've got the product that takes care of the top 20% of the earners, and we've got the product, and sometimes the same product, but our Medicare, Medicaid system might help those who have or more at the poverty level to be able to live and afford that. What we don't have is a whole series of products that cover that, say, 40 to 80 percentile income earner. That's where the challenges are in our country of developed, because that's where, you know, the bulk of our population is, yet many people don't have the assets or the resources to be able to live at the top end private pay, but they make too much to qualify for anything that would be government subsidized. So how does that look, and how does that feel? Well, at the end of the day, it still has to be attractive. And I think all of those things around the art, the fine arts, the decor, all of those things, even in the skilled nursing side, you're seeing the research, you know, that helps. It helps drive better outcomes because people are mentally in a different space. It's not just about, like I said earlier, about sort of the medical transactional piece. There's more to it than that. There's more to quality of life and better outcomes than just the transactional piece of passing a medication.
Thank you very much, both. And just to note in the chat, Miss Frances Wilkinson also noted that these beautiful arts and settings do also need to be designed and chosen for older eyes as well. So very important points, and thank you for your response. Miss Denise Swing, I see I missed your question earlier. May I ask you to please unmute and pose your question on dementia?
Hi, just before my dementia question, I just want to make a comment. I worked in a not-for-profit retirement apartment building, and they have sort of an informal art club where they collect art pieces as people donate, as people move in and out. They also have a paint club where they paint their own art, and they have so much that they have to rotate the art on the wall. So when you walk down the hallway of a not very particularly luxurious building, you feel like you're in someone's living room because the wall is completely covered with art. So it is a really like impressionable experience. So even art doesn't have to be for a high cost of living, I guess was my point.
No, absolutely.
Sorry, my question was about dementia. I really, in Canada here, we have the term memory care as well. And I strongly feel that we need to start identifying dementia care as separate from memory care, because memory care, what happens is it's mostly people in early stages of cognitive decline. And there is still a lot you can do to stimulate it, but that doesn't really help people who are in later stages. So dementia care that is specific, that covers a range from the beginning of diagnosis of dementia to the very end of life, palliative hospice needs for dementia. I feel like it's different, and maybe there's stigma. I think the business model, oh, we can't say the word dementia because it's too scary and too terrifying, so we just call it memory care. But I think they're two very completely different things. So just wondering if you had a suggestion on how we could identify that.
I don't think I do, because I think you've just enlightened me on something I hadn't thought about previously. You know, being in the United States, I've working with the operators that we work with, I've just always thought about it as memory care, and realizing that there is a whole range of people across that dementia spectrum. But I hadn't thought about it the way you say it. And I might need to noodle on that a little bit. I think you raise a great point. I have seen operators who are very good with their programming and what they do for dementia residents who ultimately get to the point of hospice and palliative and end of life care. So I know there are quality operators with some wonderful programming. In fact, I sat in on a class once several months ago with a music therapist that was just incredible, and the power of music with those who suffer from dementias is just powerful. But no, I hadn't thought about it the way you raised that issue, and now I need to. So thank you.
Thank you both, and thank you everyone. I would also just like to acknowledge there are many comments in the chat as well. So thank you to everyone who's contributed, but slowly coming close to the hour. It really goes by really quickly. You don't even realize it's 7:50, but coming close to the hour, I would just like to again highlight that this is a very important topic and drawing attention to long-term care settings, as well as some of the changes that we need to consider moving forward, particularly in the context of leadership and the way care and services are really provided. So I'm thinking as a few final questions here in bringing everything together, I'm curious to understand how you think the current model of long-term care and assisted living spaces needs to shift. I think we've had a little bit from every question and answer brought out, but how can we best support people and institutes to transform the way we provide long-term care and enable individuals in these settings to be and do what they really have reason to value?
Wow. Keep in mind, I live and work and operate in the United States, and while there are many blessings and wonderful things that come with that, there are also some challenges. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we face in this space, being in this country, is the need for some immigration reform, because we don't have enough people to handle the demand of these 1.3 million plus new workers that are going to be required to work in this space. I think we need to look at that. I think as a government, as a society, I think we need to look at how do we make that different and better and attractive. The other thing I think as operators, I don't know how many operators we might have joining us today, but one of the things, and I can speak to this from sort of two different levels, because in the other part of my life, my husband and I own and operate restaurants and have for 35 years. So I also very much understand workforce and the challenges of a workforce lately, and hiring the right people. And the one thing I think as operators, almost in any sector, but particularly in seniors housing, is we have got to sort of realize and look deeper into our organizations and grow and develop our own talent. You know, it used to be there were, you got people in and maybe they were always only caregivers, or they were, frontline employees, and because you sort of put them in that box and that's where they stayed. I don't think any of us have that luxury anymore, and nor should we even be thinking that way. I think as humans, our goal is to grow and develop other humans, whatever that might mean. Help everybody to be their best self and get to their potential. We should not limit that. And I think finding those opportunities of if we identify people who come into our organizations and as caregivers or universal workers, but sort of at that entry level front line position, how do we identify them quicker and help them believe in themselves and start to train and develop and educate them to where we need to get them to help them move up in the organization, because they've already demonstrated they have a heart and the caring capacity to be in seniors housing and work with residents and make a difference in their lives. And we still need leaders. And the industry, at least in the United States, it's a diverse industry in terms of its workforce, but there's a very disparate separation between the diversity at the frontline level and the diversity in the leadership of the organizations. And how do we get that to be different? How do we take those frontline people, identify them, help them advance? Because we have to. In order to survive, we have to. There isn't this plethora of people coming in from some magical place to come in and operate our buildings and work with our residents. They're just simply not there. They're not there. So we have to be better at growing our own.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And again, just thank you for the incredible discussions brought about today. I think you gave everyone here a lot to think about. And also thank you everyone for joining. But just before going off to our key takeaways from you, maybe just a few sentences, I would like to introduce our next week's topic as well and speaker. So next week we have the opportunity to listen to key expert Dr. Diego Herrick-Dessau from the WHO on the topic of supporting cities and communities in being age-friendly environments. So please join that discussion. It's going to be a great one next week, and we're very much looking forward to that. But back to you, Nancy, just in a few sentences, can I ask for your key takeaways for us all today and for everything that we've discussed?
Sure. I think personally be more proactive about your research and your choices, and thinking about where your own personal journey might end up that could involve seniors housing. Don't leave that to someone else to decide for you. Be more proactive. Help people around you identify seniors housing as a wonderful, meaningful career choice. And encourage them regardless of what their background or their interests might be, or their degree, whatever it might be. And then I think the other piece is of just helping recognize potential talent and helping build a generation of leaders who can help us make a difference in this space.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And before we sign off, we just also again want to remind everyone that our 16 Global Conference is coming up in late June. So we do hope to see everyone there. You could check out a little bit more at www.ifaconf.ngo. Sorry, I'm tripping on my words right now. But finally, just a special and grateful thank you again to everyone joining on this call and on this conversation. And a grateful and special thank you to all of the IFA staff members who have supported to organize this and every Global Cafe, particularly Luana, Ashley, and Jasmine. So thank you very much. Hope to see everyone next week, and wishing everyone a great rest of your days. Take care.